Hey, it's Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another Random Thoughts podcast, and today we had a Nintendo Direct that has been overly hyped, maybe to its detriment, and a surprise PlayStation State of Play that was like just announced right after Nintendo. You have to feel like Sony almost did that on purpose. Like the it happened hours after Nintendo staked their grounds. Sony was like, "We're gonna have one that day too." And I kind of have a feeling like Sony had a little inside note that despite what we all thought was coming in the Nintendo Direct, that Sony had this one in the bag. Now, I am a Nintendo fan. Well, I'm a Sega fanboy first and foremost, but I tend in my, I won't say older age, middle age, that work and all that, and the Nintendo Switch is where it's at for me. And really, the family friendly, like this whole idea of these 40 to 120 hour plus games that I can't do that. I want something quick, something fun, or something I can do with the family. That's mostly where my gaming is, but every now and then there's something that specifically hits a nostalgia point that I've got to go out and play, or at least own. I buy so many games I don't play. Um, and honestly, as someone who was super into the 16-bit era, that of course had Sega, but then later on got Nintendo, and just love everything about that, I have an affinity for Nintendo properties, and a lot of the Sega properties from that era seem to do better on Nintendo systems. So that's kind of where I've been at. So I'm always looking forward to Nintendo Directs. I don't the PlayStation State of Play and the Xbox showcases. Sometimes they're all around the same time and they're like their big event. I will, but a lot of times they don't interest me. Nintendo has marked what a direct is, what a good direct is, and other companies had done it before, but pretty much when they left E3, they set the benchmark and they started doing these directs, and other companies released. This is like an amazing marketing tool, and they have tried to emulate it, and they just haven't gotten the right pacing. However, I feel like Nintendo um, is either doing too many of these directs, don't have enough coming out, something is going on, because the directs lately have been a little lackluster. Though the last one that a lot of people thought wasn't good, I actually thought was done fairly well. And one of the things that I've kind of formulated is that there is a true Nintendo Direct formula that when they stick to, even when maybe you're not super hyped about all the games, you come off very positive. And just to kind of recap that, I brought that up and I figured it's a start out with a splash, something flashy, maybe doesn't have substance, a CG trailer, some like big announcement, whoa, this game's coming, whoa, flash, flash, flash. Oh, there wasn't actually any gameplay or anything, but it's just something flashy at the front. That's short, quick, boom. That sets the tone. Okay, stuff's going to happen in this direct. Then what happens next? Then you have, one, two, three medium-sized games that you're kind of getting a little bit of quick meat to. These are the ones that they're spending like 3 minutes on each or something. Not a whole lot of time, but they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that, oh, that. They go through, and then they go from that into usually one or two bigger. Like, this is the media. This is the one we're going to spend time. We're going to talk about, or this, that. And a lot of times, these are the games that aren't the huge system sellers. They're kind of middle tier, a lot of times Nintendo properties, or a really big third party that they don't want to give the big ending to a third party game. So usually those end up in this middle, like a big third party game, and then maybe a Nintendo game that it's not as big, and maybe it's even what the direct is a little bit themed about, but it's this is where typically, Kirby and Yoshi games and some of the sports games and stuff that are always good always good sellers, but they're not really system movers. That's where these go, and where something like Advance Wars would go, which Nintendo is just like, we finished that. We don't have enough games coming out, but we're going to hold off on that because of the Ukraine thing. I, I'm sorry, but like, we're getting Call of Duties and stuff like that, but Advance Wars looks bad because of. I'm not trying to be insensitive to that. It just seems like a very cartoony game to decide to hold off. I understood when the war first broke out, like in their launch window, why they delayed it. But now it can't. It's kind of like delaying a movie now because of COVID for movie theaters. At a certain point, it's like, are you going to delay this to 2025? How late are you going to hold on to something? So I was kind of surprised not to see that in this direct. Now, they had spent a lot of time, but that would be something to quickly, like, oh, here's some updates, and hey, we added this cool extra feature since we had extra time to work on it. Would have been a good spot. But anyways, they do that. Then they usually have the sizzle reel after that. And then after the sizzle reel, they kind of like give the thing that's not as exciting. They kind of like combine it with the sizzle reel, like DLC for all the games that are coming up. Oh yeah, we got Mario Kart. We get they put that in there real quick. Beat through them right along with the sizzle reel, where everything's like just throwing names at you in brief 15 seconds of gameplay. To remind you that this game is coming out soon on Nintendo Switch. It's coming out on everything else or whatever, but it's here too, kind of stuff. And then usually after that, that's when they'll do like some of their Nintendo Online service, or talk about the Mario movie, or something that is specific to Nintendo, a mini console, something that isn't really super big, but it's also something kind of really cool and interesting to like Super Nintendo nerds, but maybe not to the general public. And then right after that, that's when the big splashy game, the big one everybody's been waiting for, your Zelda, your Mario, whatever, Metroid, whatever, like the big game of the next season or time period before the next direct, whatever that game is, that's where it gets showcased. And they go into there, and then they do just one more thing. And they pop a trailer at the end. Now, this could be like they're doing Smash, they're like talking about a new Mario Kart, or whatever the big title is, and then they just one more thing, and that's usually some big reveal that's related to that game, or it's the announcement of a completely other game that's just a title name drop, or something that we've been telling you is in development, but now we got a CGI trailer, something like that. That's usually Zelda, Mario, Smash, something super big that we can just throw at the end. Splatoon 2, 3, 4's coming, boom, big ending. Why does that big ending, almost hollow nothing announcement work so well to hype us? Because we just had this super awesome game. Let's compare that to what we got in this direct. Now, they nailed the first step, the Fire Emblem Engage, completely unknown game, completely new. It's not a remake, not a port, nothing. Completely new Fire Emblem game. A whole bunch of CGI trailers plastered up. We didn't actually see any gameplay. We just saw a bunch of CGI cutscene trailers. But it was splashy, and it was like, all right, this is gonna be in a direct. Put us in the mood. Everything that followed that was a letdown. And even though there were some good announcements, first of all, the amount of DLC announcements, they seem to fill the necessity. The Mario Kart DLC that had already been announced was re-announced. The Xenoblade 3 DLC that had already been announced was announced. The Splatoon DLC that was expected just basically got a release date. No information really about it. Just it's happening. And it wasn't even DLC. It was a battle event. Mario Strikers Battle League, the promised DLC, got showcased and told when we were going to. But once again, this is DLC we already knew. And then the Wii Sports, Nintendo Switch Sports Golf, something that came packed in with a Wii, that had said, hey, this is going to be added in the summer. Actually, it's going to be moved to the fall, and now it's fall, and it's moved to holiday season. So it's already supposed to be out. It's something we've been promised. It's free. It's something we were told was coming. It's something so basic it came packed into the Wii. Is delayed. It was an announcement of already previously showcased and detailed out DLC, and it was just announcing that it was delayed. I'm sorry, DLC delays? That's a tweet. Don't make that part of your presentation. Like, if you were going to make that part of your presentation, say, but because we're taking this time, we're going to add other modes, or we're also going to promise you that we're going to bring back boxing or baseball or something, something that you wanted. We're going to put that on there as coming in the future. But we know we already promised this. It's still coming. Just wait. Don't just announce it and not have a something else. Like, that's why. That's not the place. Okay, there were some gems in here. We had Octopath Traveler 2. This is the, Square Enix going back to basics like the early Dragon Quest Final Fantasy game style gameplay, but doing it so beautiful. This was such a huge hit. It was barely touched on. Everything that looked good, but we didn't really get to see a whole lot. Man, I think I'm getting an echo in my van today. A ton of anime farming sims. Like, there was kind of the main ones, and then there was all the clone ones and all the unique ones. And oh, this one's a farming sim, but it also, you battle monsters. And this is a farming sim, and it also is a dating sim. And it was just kind of, and this one you raise a farm and you have a kid. Just throughout this whole direct, there was a lot of those. And if that is like your jam, that is what this is. And I've noticed that sometimes on the directs that hit less, it'll be really RPG heavy and it'll be really sim heavy. Those games are filler. When it comes to like JRPGs, like Octopath, I put that as a highlight because that is like a big name above the rest. When you take a random one being ported from Japan where there's no English voice acting and it's an unknown property and you're just showing us some cutscenes or a little bit, that really doesn't have an impact, especially here in the West. And yet Sonic, which doesn't have a big presence in Japan, was in the Japanese version of the Direct. Sonic Frontiers wasn't in the English. Instead, we got farming sims that don't really do well here. I don't know. We had It Takes Two. This was last year's Game of the Year award that it won, which means, yeah, it was out on everything else last year. Now, is this some impressive AAA game that we didn't think was possible on the Switch? No, this is an indie game. This is a game that's totally possible on the Switch. It just took an extra year to get here. So it's like, this is a really cool thing that this is on the Switch. It's on the go. It's a big name title. But once again, it wasn't given a large look at. And this is a game, like a lot of the games in these things are like Rune Factory and different things. Like, these are games that have been on other systems and PC for years. It's just cool that it's being on the Switch, but, they're just going through them. But when you're going through these games, what other games are getting this kind of highlight? Well, we have Just Dance 2023. Got as much time as Mario plus Rabbids Spark of Hope. That's coming out on October 20th. So it Takes Two. Got as much time as Just Dance 2023. Let's face it, Just Dance, I know it does bonkers in the sales, but who's it selling to? The casuals. People who just buy Just Dance, the moms, the clientele of that, they're not watching the Nintendo Direct wanting to know what songs in the next Just Dance game. They're just going to buy the next Just Dance game. And the people who are super into the Direct, like, they don't care about Just Dance. So, like that should get like 10. It should just be like bullet point. Oh, hey, Just Dance 2023, it's happening. You all knew it. Okay, bye. We don't need to spend any real time on this, but it got more time than Mario plus Rabbids Spark of Hope, coming out on October 20th. Recently had announced that Rayman, the Ubisoft platforming mascot, is going to be in it. Yes, the Rabbids had their first start out with Rayman Rabid Ribbies. So the fact that, when the Rabbids were mixed with Mario, it was kind of like this tangential thing. But this is two platforming mascots appearing in the same game. This isn't quite the same as Mario and Sonic, but it almost be as big as Mario plus Crash Bandicoot. This is a huge thing. Did they show anything of that DLC that was teased on like Twitter and stuff? No. They really didn't show anything new. It was just kind of recycled things, a little teeny tidbit about the Lumas, but nothing really of substance about this great, amazing game that has not really had a direct that has really shined anything about substance on it. It's been very light on info on this game, and it's coming out next month. This is kind of the direct to go big with this. This could have been the big splash game of this direct, but it wasn't. They hardly talked about it at all. Bayonetta 3. Now that was a previous direct that had a huge presence. That is a game that tons of people are super excited for. I'm not personally, but I'm a Sega fan, so I understand how great that is for all the Sega fans that are that, and the Platinum fans that are really excited about it. It comes out October 28th. Once again, it got less screen time than Just Dance 2023. Okay, we've talked about DLC, all these different... What's worse than that? Well, that's talking about streaming games. Nintendo is notorious for having bad online. Like, even on games like Smash and Mario Kart, like, their online compared to other companies is bad. Google and Amazon are having trouble with their streaming service. These are internet giants. Nintendo, when it comes to the big three in producing online play, is dead last. I think the Dreamcast had better online functionality than current Nintendo's. Fans have rehooked up the Dreamcast Online Network, and I imagine you can play smoother Dreamcast games online than you can Nintendo Switch. So when you're talking about, they announced a bunch, now it's Resident Evil games, all these new Resident Evil remakes are saying they're going to be on Switch. Even though the Switch can't possibly hand it, you're going to stream it to the system. Basically, I could stream it to my cell phone if I wanted to do that over a better network. Why would I stream a game to my Switch when the Switch just doesn't have good support for that? Now, Google, like Stadia and the Amazon, whatever their thing's called, like those work if you live in a big city and you have Google thing. Now, the Switch thing, apparently it works great over in Japan. Why? Because Japan has great internet. It's a small island. It's easy to upgrade, and their internet's way beyond what we have here in the U.S. In the U.S., it's like some of the major cities have like the super Google fiber optic stuff, but most of us don't have that here. And so, like, this is going to be a non-thing. Spent more time than they did about Mario plus Rabbids on streaming games. Now, one of the big things that happens with these things is people overhype stuff. And one of the big things is that now that they've, with the exception of Star Fox, please bring Star Fox Zero over to the Switch, like with better regular standard controls, because that was the only two things against that game, because that game was amazing, is the wonky motion controls with the touchpad and the fact that it was on a Wii U, which nobody bought. Put that on the Switch, give it some standard controller controls, that game would do phenomenal. Talk about a game that had almost no support on the Wii U that would suddenly be a great well-selling game, that would sell well. They don't do that. But the rumor had it was that we were going to see some impressive remake, remaster, whatever, of some GameCube and Wii games, specifically in the Metroid and Zelda area. That they wanted to do a Zelda collection similar to what they did with Mario. They'd missed the anniversary year, they saw the outcry for it, they got the Zelda game about to come out, and that they were going to have this collection dropped out of some of the Zelda games that haven't been ported from the GameCube, Wii era, and have those come forward onto the Switch in a package deal for like a limited time, like Mario was, and then have a Metroid Prime come remake. So these, not remake, like those are going to be like HD ports, but Metroid Prime is a full remake, and that's why we're not getting Metroid Prime 2 or 3, but just the first Metroid Prime, completely remade as a stayover for maybe next year having the big Metroid Prime 4. So to keep the franchise, we had Metroid Dread, which was the good 2D game. Now we're going to have this port of Metroid Prime, and then we're going to have Prime 4 next year. That is what every analyst, every person was saying, everybody was expecting. Well, there was a Wii game that got a port. It was Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Now, I loved this game on the Wii. However, there has already been a decent Kirby 2D game on the Switch. There has been now a 3D, fully like blow your mind out, plus a lot of quirky games. Part of Kirby's celebration, we've, over the past 2 years, received a ton of Kirby on that. Kirby is not Mario. You can overdo Kirby. I love Kirby. I actually like Kirby better than Mario. But I got to admit that as much as I love this game, I haven't finished Kirby in the Forgotten Land. I'm not about to buy this game that I've already played, I've already beaten, because I'm not hungry for Kirby at the moment. Now, had I not received the Forgotten Land, I would have been all over this game. But right now, I'm satisfied with Kirby. I want Donkey Kong. I want, because I've been getting new Kirby. I don't want to go back and, it's just, I don't think Kirby has that much power. So it was kind of a letdown. I have all the great games people were thinking, this never came up into the conversation. And it was an easy one for Nintendo to do. So they did it. Okay, now here's one of the biggest downers of the Direct. Miyamoto comes out. Now that should not go together. You should not be saying downer and Miyamoto, because he's the best part of most of the Directs. But he brings out, he says, are you all excited about the Mario movie? We're not talking about that today. And we've had great success with the new Mario Universal Studios Japan and the one in LA and Orlando. Those are going to be coming out next year. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Pikmin 4. Like, oh, okay. This is going to be the mid-tier Nintendo game that, like, a lot of people like. It's not really my thing. I've played Pikmin games, but I've never really gotten into it. But I'm like, okay, I'm here. This is one of Miyamoto's passion projects. And he's got a Pikmin 4 t-shirt. And he shows, like, a little image on a Switch of a Pikmin 4. And he says, look at the perspective. And it's basically like a 15-second GIF playing. It's like, whoa, I guess I see something that looks like every other Pikmin, but close up. Okay. And then he goes, that's in development. But have you heard about Pikmin Bloom? Let me tell you, we've teamed up with Niantic, the people who made Pokemon Go. And wait a second. You talked about this exact game exactly 1 year ago. And it came out in October, exactly 1 year ago. A month after you extensively talked about this on a Direct. Now, then it's a game that's been out for a year, hasn't done well. See, Nintendo's a little frustrated because Pokemon Go does gangbusters, but they get like a quarter of that. They get like 1/4 because the other there's 3 other companies that have their share of the pot. Because Nintendo shares the right to Pokemon with 2 other companies, and then they had Niantic develop the game, so that's a 4th company. But this is just between Niantic and Nintendo, so they would get half the profits. So why isn't Pikmin as big as Pokemon Go? Maybe we just need to tell you about it again, because the last time we told you about it and you were unimpressed, you didn't realize that playing this game will make Pikmin 4 happen. Nobody wants a mobile game. And then they're cool social, like Pokemon Go was a phenomenon. It just hit at the right time, right thing. But that's not going to happen over again. And you can't. And Pikmin's probably not the property it's going to happen again with. Like, maybe if you did something with Legend of Zelda or Mario, you might be able to get a similar response out, but not Pikmin. It's nowhere near big enough a franchise to capture like Pokemon Go did. Okay. So that was kind of disappointing. Pikmin 4 was a GIF that and an ad for a mobile game. But now we get the biggest, splashiest highlight of the whole thing, the Nintendo Online service N64 expansion pack. That's right. The free ROM ports of N64 games, the new ones being added, that were available back on the Wii Shop, is the highlight of this. But we'll get to why that is. First, we got Pilot Wing 64. Cool game. Was really cool at the time. Not actually that cool anymore. Mario Party 1 through 3. Great. That is great. They did not say anything about online play for those that I saw. Everybody wants to play Mario Party online. Nintendo, just make that standard. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. I can't recall if they said anything about online play on that. That's another game that if it didn't have online play, that I don't think it's that big of an announcement. 1080 Snowboarding. Awesome. I love this game. And then Excitebike 64. I didn't even know that a game existed, but it kind of looked cool. 3D polygonal Excitebike. But then after it seemed like they finished it out, it's dun 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 dun. GoldenEye 64, the game that every nerd seemed to want, but everyone thought it wasn't possible because the gaming rights to Bond is just insane. Part of it is owned by MGM, who just got bought. Like, the rights around James Bond is insane. And then to have the rights be split between Microsoft and Nintendo, because Microsoft bought Rare, and so therefore they own the rights to that, but they don't own the rights, I think, to re-release GoldenEye. Like, they can't do it without Nintendo's permission, but Nintendo can't do it without Microsoft's permission. But also, neither of them can do it without the multiple people involved in the Bond license permission. It just is a nightmare. So everybody said, oh, it's going to be, I think it's Perfect Dark or whatever, the one that's like, was supposed to be a sequel to GoldenEye, and they just made it not James Bond because that was going to be too difficult. But no, it's coming. Now, here's the caveat that you don't see in the Direct. It's also coming to Xbox, and the Xbox version is going to be HD in 4K, and it's going to have better frames, and it's and it's going to have achievements and stuff. On the Nintendo version, it's going to have the frame rate of the N64. You're going to feel like you're playing that N64 game, except it's going to be much more noticeable because you're not on a CRTV. But it has one added thing: online play. So that's going to be the one thing. No achievements, none of that stuff, but it will have online play. And what this means is that everybody's going to get super excited. They're going to download this game, and they're going to realize that it was a single stick, tank controlled shooter. And all these people who are into Call of Duty and Battlefield and Battlefront and Halo and all that kind of stuff are going to be like, I can't play this. This sucks. Like, this controls like garbage. Me? This is like the last shooter I was any bit decent at, because I cannot wrap my hands around the 2D. And I'm just not attracted to shooters. Like, the concept of shooters is just not my thing. But this is a game that all my friends had, and so I played it a lot. I feel though, like, if I went on and had a little nostalgia, that I think that, like, some of these people are top tier shooter players in all these games, I might actually be decent against that, because this is I don't have to go back. I'm still at GoldenEye level of I'm not at I can't do that. Okay. As hyped as this is a ROM port running on an emulator with multiplayer online enabled. It's more the fact that we thought it couldn't happen, the novelty of it, that makes it a big announcement. Outside of the whole license issue out of that, this really isn't any bigger than any other of, like, Mario Kart 64 or Smash 64. Like, it's a standard popular N64 multiplayer game that's really cool that we have, but it's not that big of a deal. In all honesty, if we're being truthful with ourselves, we take the rose-colored glasses off, this is not that big of a thing. But you know what is? What's the last thing? The just one more thing? This failed at being the super flashy thing that puts us in the state of, like, ultimate hype. But the just one more thing was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, or the Breath of the Wild sequel, as we've known it, whose name was so revealing that they couldn't reveal it because it basically would spoil the entire story of the game. We've seen, actually, previously we'd seen, I think combined total, like 2 minutes of this game. We've seen a little bit. We got the least amount seen of this game to date. He jumped on a thing and flew into the title. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That means nothing. It means nothing unless there's some, like, huge, like, all these, like, Zelda lore crafters are going to be, oh, that's totally talking about this and this is going to happen. Maybe I'm totally missing it, but this means nothing to me. I know I'm a Zelda noob. I've only played a couple of the games, but this means nothing to me. How is this? This is not like The Legend of Zelda Mission Cap or something, like, is he going into the tier world? I don't know. I don't know. But it's a game that's coming out soon. It's the big title. And at this point, they've been teasing it for 2 years. We've seen footage of this game 2 years ago. They've been talking. We knew this game was in development like three and a half years ago. And was like, when are they going to... And then they finally announced it, and then nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. And we have another time when they, like, oh, let's show you another little brief bit. Oh, it must mean it's getting close. And then nothing and nothing. And at this point, a game that's been for 2 years, a name title drop is no longer impressive. Now, if we'd had, like, an amazing Metroid Prime 4 is coming trailer before this, we would have been hyped and we'd been like, yeah! At this point, show a bit of Zelda off, and then have Metroid Prime 4 blah 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 title be the teaser at the end. Don't have Zelda, or even the Zelda name, the just one more thing. You've all been wondering what the name, but if you'd had, like, at least 5 minutes of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom gameplay before this, it would have been satisfying, but it was nothing. This game isn't coming out after the next E3 season. It's not coming after the next Tokyo. Like, this is the Tokyo. This is the last big thing. It's coming out in May. So there's like, what is it? Was it PAX East or PAX West? There'll be a PAX between now and then, like in February. That's the only other big event to do this around, to showcase this game. It's kind of weird. The only thing I can think is that maybe the rumors are true. Maybe there is a Switch Pro, and it's gonna be like the big Switch Pro Direct game. And I don't want to show it off because they don't want to give away the fact that they want to show it at its best. And if they show it at its best now, you're gonna realize that's not running on a Switch. That's the only thing I can think. But yeah, they needed to end strong. They ended with a dribble. Already a game packed full of a lot of middle of the road games and DLC and streaming things, and then to end on the dribble, it just didn't work. Now, I'm not a Sony guy. You know, of all the companies, they're kind of my least like, but I've owned a PS3 before. I'm not against Sony. And I will admit that they had, I can't remember what year it is, but the year that like Shenmue and Final Fantasy VII Remake and all that was announced, like that was probably the best E3 presentation in the history of E3, and Sony did it. And they had the whole, like, here's how you trade games with your friends on this. Hand it to them, making fun of Micro. Like, that presentation, Sony was on fire. So I know Sony can bring it, but so often than not, Sony presentations are boring. But lately, they've been doing pretty good. Especially, and they bring the games. Now, when it comes to, normally you say you want the games and you want to have actual gameplay trailer. You don't want to have just CGI trailers. Now, Nintendo had a number of little bits of gameplay, but it was without description. It was like under 40 seconds, under a minute. And there were just game after game after game. Like, a lot of times you didn't even know what you were looking at. You didn't know if it was a trailer or if that. In this PlayStation 1, most of it is trailers, but they're trailers using the in-game engine. So you see a lot of stuff that, okay, like the first thing, it starts out with that pizzazz, Tekken 8. And there's a moment where, okay, this is a CGI trailer. Wait a second, that actually looks like the in-game fighting. Are they doing this in engine? Are they making this trailer with like a little bit of editing? But is this what the fights are going to look like? That's pretty good. Another one. Sega fan, Yakuza Like a Dragon. I can't remember what the word is, but there's like a version that never got translated to the US. It was like the wonky of the Yakuza crew get like sent back in time to like feudal Japan, and so you're having all these like modern gangsters out there dealing katanas and fighting with samurais. It was wacky, it was weird, way before the property was weird and wacky, and everyone thought it would never come to the US. Well, it's recently being remade because Yakuza's doing so well, so when they remade this game, they're porting it to the US. Big win. There's a lot of other games that looked impressive, a lot of fantasy stuff. There was actually one that was kind of like a mech warrior game. I felt the only downside to that game was that it had, it was in Japanese and just subtitled, not translated. And I felt like this was actually a Japanese game that would appeal a lot to American audiences and could be a big game for Sony if they put some English voice dub in it. Because that's the problem. The Halo, the Titanfall, all those, the Anthem, Fallout, like that crowd that would be all over that game, they're not going to read the titles. They're not going to read the cutscenes. They want English, top-notch English voice acting. So that game looked really impressive, but then it was... What I would say would be the Sony down point was actually still very cool, which was the stuff of talking about the PlayStation VR2 games. We haven't even seen really the VR2. We know it's going to be around $900 or something like that, ridiculous, like even more expensive than the PS5, which is already ridiculously expensive. So, you know, you're basically buying a used car to have this set up. Somewhere around, like $1,500-$1,600 to have the setup and the games, and it's just. But we got a Star Wars game in VR that looked kind of cool, and we got a role-playing, D&D style, like roll the dice, move you guys around a kind of board, and like the role-playing is happening out like it's like you would imagine D&D would be in the Star Wars universe. We saw chess in the Star Wars. This is like that, but like D&D, like play, like that seemed very nerdy. If I had a VR set, that'd be the kind of thing that I'd be like, boom. Of course, I'd want a sci-fi version because I'm more into that than I am to, the fantasy stuff. But it just was a cool thing, and so it was like, that's like Nintendo bringing up the mobile games or the DLC, but it was cool. It was, it was interesting. Not something really that I was looking for, but it was an interesting diversion. Okay, now the finisher, the big pizzazz. The God of War trailer was breathtaking. It was breathtaking. It was story driven. It got you just. I've never played a God of War game. I'm not into the lore of that. Chris Judge as Kratos, like it's one of those franchises that I have no interest in playing, but I have a lot of respect for. And boy, was this an impressive trailer. It wasn't gameplay. Still an impressive trailer. Got people hyped. This was the way to end an online presentation on this. So, like, even though there was like a third, maybe even a quarter of the games, I believe Sony only had like 10 games in total, compared to like Nintendo must have had like 20, probably 30 or 40 games in theirs. But it was so like, oh, here's this, and no substance. And all of Sony's stuff looked like either trailers or like in-engine CG trailer. Like they were either CG or they were in-engine stuff, but it wasn't actual gameplay. But it all looked cool. It was a short hype. These weren't necessarily stuff coming out right away that we needed, like, oh, whether I buy this or not. It was just good, and it was only 20 minutes. Nintendo's was 40 minutes, and there wasn't a single thing in there that made you feel like this was worth sitting through 40 minutes. There was nothing that was like, oh man, the way they went in depth into this. There was a lot of fluff, that should be stuffed around something big, but instead of being stuffed around something big, it was stuffed around more fluff, more DLC talk, more farming sims, more just fluff. There were a lot of great games in that Nintendo Direct, and unfortunately, I feel like they're not going to get viewed because everybody's going to be more concerned about what's going on with Sony here. They're going to be more concerned about their overall feeling when they left the Direct is that it stunk, which automatically puts it stunk feeling on everything that was in the Direct. But it's like, wait, no, Octopath Traveler 2, GoldenEye, there were things. Mario plus Rabbids Spark of Hope. Like, that is such a huge, crazy, looking forward to that game. And it was just like, Mario Strikers, but like they're turning all the Mario sports games into like this games as a service type stuff. And it's like just killed all the fun of those games. I really hate that these games come up as the Hollow Show. I want to get that game, but I'm waiting like a year and a half to get that game because I don't want to get a tenth of that game and then every 6 months get more of a game that normally I bought as a complete game on the GameCube. Just my feelings. All right, that's my thoughts. What were your thoughts? It's in Microsoft's ball now. Will they come out with something? They need to come out with something new. Did you hear that the head of 343, the people making Halo Infinite and whatnot, all the Halo games, left before the latest update? like unanimously, they got ousted there. So, supposedly to spend time with family in a time of need, which is the speak that they always say for this kind of thing. But given the backlash that game has gotten, I think that CEO has been given the boot. So it's Microsoft. Microsoft's spending a lot of money, but they just it's kind of like for 20 years down the road. Anyways, that's what I thought. What did you think? Catch you in the next episode.